All right. Please begin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sunishka. I'm a grad student at UT Austin in the Ecology Evolution Behavior program. And today I'm going to talk about how there are many ways to find a mate in the animal kingdom. So, specify that. Okay. Like that? Am I doing the wrong thing? Can you start talking? Oh, wow. Thank you. Okay. So when we think about how animals find mates, a lot of us immediately think about, males courting females and females choosing which males to mate with. This is typically how it works. So there are many examples of this in the animal kingdom with males performing elaborate dances, developing coloration and ornamentation, or in the case of these brown anoles here, developing a dewlap that they use to defend territories against other males and then mating with females in that territory. So courtship is rampant. It's very common. We've all heard about it. We all know good examples of it. And the reason why we think there's a lot of species, there's courtship by males and choice by females, so female choosiness, is because of this difference in their gametes, right? So classically, in a lot of species, males produce sperm. So for the purposes of this talk, males and females will be sperm producers and egg producers in a species. So males produce sperm, which is less costly than females who produce eggs. And therefore, males invest more into courtship, and while females are the ones that are choosing. But this is not always the case. And so today's talk is really going to be about how there are no rules in the animal kingdom. It just depends on the species. So for example, in this picture, which one do you think is the male and which one is the female? It's not difficult. Top one. Male is the bottom one? Yes. The male is the bottom one. However, females in this species develop this orange patch that males have a preference for. So males prefer females to mate with that have larger and brighter orange patches on them. In this picture, they look basically identical, but one is a male and one is a female. The male that is calling is the male. But females also have coloration on their throats in these blue-throat birds that varies between females, and males choose females with a brighter coloration to do the calls towards. And lastly, in these newts, which one's the male, which one's the female? Which one's the male? Bottom or top? It is the bottom one. And the female's coloration is what males are choosing for. She develops brighter orange coloration in the underneath part of her body. So male choosiness also exists in a lot of species because it's not simply a case of gametes. Both the male and female are investing quite a lot into reproduction, right? So here, this was a small piece about how reproduction happens or how mating happens, but how much mating happens in the animal kingdom. So Bateman in 1948 wrote one paper in his entire life and came up with this principle that for males, it's beneficial to have more mates across their lifetime, and that increases their fitness. Here, fitness is not like strength. Fitness, in an evolutionary sense, is how well you're able to pass on your genes to the next generation. So for males, it's beneficial if you have more mates, but then for females, the benefit of having more mates kind of tapers out after one or two mates. It's better for the females to invest more into their offspring. So his principle really came from learning about species that have maternal care, where males are, moving around, finding mates, finding females to mate with, and then females are giving birth and then taking care of their offspring as well. So they're investing a lot into not just gestation, but also the care of the offspring. And this, of course, exists in systems that have polygyny, right? And there are many species like that. But we know that this is not always the case. So polygyny, where one male mates with multiple females, occurs in many species. But we also have a lot of polyandry in the animal kingdom. You'll see that sometimes these things happen because of how parental care works in a lot of species. So for dugongs, they typically have one female with two partners. For her entire life, she'll only mate with these two males. And in a lot of different populations of dugongs, they've actually found that it's more males than just two, but it's always consistently a set of males that all compete to gain access to one female and mate with her. In rattlesnakes, they actually have long-term sperm storage. So females can mate with multiple males, store their sperm, and then give birth to or lay a set of eggs that all have different paternity, so multiple paternity. And this is another example of polyandry. And then in emus, they have paternal care, which I didn't know about. And so the mothers are the ones, or the females are the ones going around and mating with multiple males, while the males mate with only one female or only a few females and take care of the offspring. And of course, there's many examples of polygynandry across the animal kingdom as well, where multiple males and multiple females are all mating with each other. So polygamy is very common. But then there's also social monogamy in the animal kingdom. Now, why is it called social monogamy and not monogamy will become clear in a second, but this is a nice definition I found in an article where social monogamy is defined as pair bonding between a male and female that exclusively mate with one another, raise offspring together, and spend time together. So social monogamy exists, like it's pretty common, and immediately when you think of social monogamy, a lot of people think of birds. Most birds have social monogamy. But it looks different with different birds. And now it's going to get a little confusing when I show you this example. But in house wrens, we still call that a type of social monogamy. But what they're doing is they're mating with a male and a female mate with each other. There's a clutch of eggs. They take care of those hatchlings, and then they move on to another partner. But the fact that they're raising a set of offspring together makes this a monogamous system just for that one nesting. In American robins, the pairs last for a breeding season over multiple nestings, but then they fly away and look for other partners in the next breeding season. And we know that swans mate for life, and they only have this one partner across breeding seasons, across their lifetime. But in birds, which were classically thought to have monogamy, what was found was that there's actually a lot of extra pair paternity going on. So these are some superb fairy wrens that are very cute. Wanted to show the screenshot because this YouTuber is really good. But in a study in 1994, they found that about 76% of all offspring that they sampled came from fathers that were, not the ones raising them. So they surveyed many nests. They found, I think, almost 100% had some eggs came from a different father. And that 76% of all the eggs that they looked at were being fathered by a different male bird compared to the biological father. And this is like a confusing thing, because I told you for animals, fitness depends on how well you pass on your genes to the next generation. So a lot of fathers here are taking care of their offspring that are not their own, but they're also benefiting from putting their eggs in multiple nests and ensuring that some offspring survive because of another father. So there's a lot of promiscuity in the animal kingdom. And then another example of social monogamy are prairie voles, which I think have people heard about prairie voles before in this room? Prairie voles are these really cute little rodents found all across North America, and they pair bond. They're a pair bonding species. They mate for life. They're actually used as a study system to study the neurobiology of love. And people have found things like oxytocin, where it's in the brain, and how that results in them forming a bond, and what results in a stronger bond compared to one that's delayed. So prairie voles are a very important system for understanding neurobiology of behavior, specifically mating. But what was found is about half of all litters in a given population can come from multiple fathers. So why is this happening in a species that has pair bonding, right? So the reason is because there are multiple tactics that males use to find mates. So in this species, some males are stationary, they pair bond, and then they stay with a female, so that's why we call them stationary. And when the female gives birth to the litter, they perform parental care as well. This is a biparental system. However, some males are wandering. They go around and look for other females to mate with. Now, these females may or may not be pair bonded, but they are mating with other males. And they are known as wandering. The advantages are different, right? So you either stay with one female, you're guaranteed that this female is going to mate with you, and then you have the offspring that you are taking care of, and you can guarantee their success. Or you can wander around and mate with multiple females, and you can avoid the costs of doing parental care. So that's how these wandering males succeed. And this is an example of alternative mating tactics. Alternative mating tactics is when in a species when the same sex has or different types of tactics that are performed. So in any given time, you'll find both stationary and wandering males in a population. Can these wandering males now switch to being stationary is an ongoing field of research. So another classic example of alternative mating tactics are bluegill sunfish. This male that I just showed you is a nesting male. So he's big, he has coloration, and they're found in a lot of lakes and slow-moving rivers. So what they do is they create these nests, or like a little like just divot in the lake bed, where females will come, identify that as a spot for laying her eggs, and then also see this male, displaying and courting her. And then she'll lay her eggs, the male will release his sperm, and that's how they mate. But what happens in these species is that there are other individuals. So a male may come by that looks like a female. We call these satellite males. And the nesting male will not see him as a threat because he thinks that's just another female. But what these males do is they come and they lay their, or release their sperm and leave. And this is how they sneak mating with this female, or they sneak some copulations in. This species is really cool because it also has a third type of male called a sneaker male. So a sneaker male is just a smaller male that will come and release his sperm and leave, and he uses his small body size to his advantage. Now, sneaker males are very common in a lot of different fish species. The satellite male is kind of unique here because it's a female mimic. So all these three males are getting some sort of reproductive success. Of course, the nesting male is the most successful, but these sneaker and satellite males are also getting in some of their sperm that is fertilizing some of these eggs laid by the female and passing on their genes. And in these species, in bluegill sunfish at least, the parental males or the nesting males mature much later. The sneaker males and satellite males mature earlier. So there's a lot of advantages that come from maturing earlier. Maturing is just when you can release sperm. But then they also avoid the costs of building this nest and developing these big characteristics to display. And you can even think about these big coloration and size type of characteristics being desirable to predators. So you're also avoiding predation to some extent in these species. But then the nesting male has all the advantage. He can control the mating, he can court the females, he can defend his territory, and he is aggressive towards these satellite and sneaker males, if he can identify them. Another example of sneaky mating, this is the only invertebrate I'll talk about, the cuttlefish in the background. So this guy has a really cool website. I think you should all check it out, but this is the one picture I wanted to show you. That cuttlefish at the back, in the back is much bigger than this one in the foreground. It's just hard to tell from this picture, and he's guarding a female underneath him. What this male is doing, he's much smaller, and he's going towards the larger cuttlefish and changing his coloration to look like a female. It's also very cool that he's changing the coloration from the side that's facing the larger male. And he's going to mimic a female, go near him. The male is going to think it's just another female. He's going to sneakily copulate with this female and then leave. So cuttlefish can do female mimicry to sneak copulations. So sneak mating is very common in the animal kingdom, can be very fun, but it can also get very aggressive, unfortunately. So I think a lot of people know about chimpanzees and that coercive mating happens in a lot of chimpanzees. Recent studies showed that in this population in Uganda, the chimps that were coercing and then the chimps that were successful in aggressive fights with other males, these are the ones that were successfully passing on their genes, had the most fitness over time. And why was this happening? It's because these coercive males are the ones that are not able to win fights anymore. They're actually older males, and they were only able to win, they were only able to gain copulations with females via coercive mating at that point. Ducks, we all know, have a lot of coercive mating going on. There's, of course, courtship, and a lot of people have heard of this, but there's also a lot of coercive mating happening in ducks because of their intermittent organ that they have. If anybody knows about them, you should look it up. Yes, the corkscrew, right? But the females also have a, what is it called? An anti-clockwise vagina that they have, so they can actually change how loose or tight those muscles are to choose who they copulate with. This doesn't always work, but it does exist, and it's a really cool system. But yeah, there's a lot of coercion in ducks also. About 40% of all copulations in some species comes from coercive mating. And then coercion also exists in some fish. So I'll talk, that's the rest of my talk. So these are the fish. These are not the fish I study. I study similar fish. This is the least killifish. And if you can look at the part of its body that's like hanging at the bottom, that's its intermittent organ. It uses it to inseminate females. And it's pretty large. It's like a huge thing to lug around, you know, like compared to his body size. But they invest a lot into it. And the reason I'm talking about insemination is because these are actually live-bearing fish. So the males will inseminate females, and the females will gestate these, eggs, and then the fish, the juveniles, come out as like fully formed fry. They don't really come out as like unformed like embryos, which is really cool. So they don't have external fertilization, which is very common in a lot of fish. That is the release of eggs and sperm. They have internal fertilization. Live-bearing fish is a whole family of fish. It's really cool. There's many examples, and they have a huge diversity of mating systems within them. So I'll describe that now. So one of the species, just like the least killifish, is the mosquito fish. If you ever go on a hike in Texas, you're probably seeing these mosquito fish. They're highly invasive. And they have only one mating tactic, which is coercion. All males are coercive. And a lot of thinking and research goes into why this even exists in the first place. Like, females are running away from these males. They are shoaling together so that they can avoid them. In my research, I've found that they show high elevated like stress response, right, in presence of these males. But the whole species just has coercive males, and at some point, females have to choose to mate or not. Like, it's kind of weird. Okay. Then there's sailfin mollies and swordtails. So swordtails are the species that I study. In both of these pictures, you can see a larger male that has the coloration because he does courtship. And then you can see a smaller male, at least in the swordtail picture, who chases females. And both these tactics exist in the same species, which is very cool. And I'm trying to understand why. And then there's also guppies that have only one type of male, but he can do both courtship and coercion. He can switch between tactics. And now here we don't know how much they're choosing to or what, but they do change their mating tactic with context. So in high predation environments, a lot of males will choose to do coercion instead of courtship so that they don't really go and like flash their colors in front of the female, lest that also attracts a predator. And then there's melanzona guppies, where there's 5 mating tactics. It's super cool. The first 3, the orange, yellow, and blue, are all courting male types, but they breed true. So there's always red, blue, and yellow morphs in a given population. Along with these other 2, the last one is a female. In panel D, that male forms a territory and defends his set of females from other males. And so he focuses most of his attention to other males and driving them away. And then in E is a coercive male who chases females. And all of these at any given time are found all together in a population. And so across this whole phylogeny of live-bearing fish, you can see that there's a lot of variation in where courtship is present. I think I just pay attention to the blue color and see how many species have it and how many don't, right? And there's, of course, other traits as well that just vary across this one very closely related set of fish, which also represents the variety that we see across the animal kingdom more broadly. And studying these species, so I only study the swordtails. I spent my entire PhD just studying them and the variation between these 2 males. But it can give us answers as to how diversity across the animal kingdom can emerge. And with that, I'd like to thank the Nite team and my lab and my funding sources. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you so much. And also, we were introduced to our fabulous speaker tonight by the folks at the Texas Science Festival, and I just wanted to give them a shout out because we were really grateful for their support and engagement. So, round of applause for them too. Yeah. All right. So, who's got my first question tonight? Everyone's just thinking about fish. All right. So, what you got?
Yes. Earlier in the slideshow, you showed a picture of least killifish, and I'm curious what least means in terms of.
Oh, I don't
names.
know.
Oh,
That's
okay.
just what they're called, the least killifish. I think sometimes, there's different types of killifish, and it could be because of their. Do you know? Sometimes they have other killifish that are described, and maybe this one was the smallest one that they have found. That's my guess. But I never tried to understand why people name species the way they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of funny bird names, so it wouldn't surprise me if there are a lot of funny fish
Yeah.
names. What you got, my dear?
So I had a question about the cuttlefish. You mentioned that some males would change their patterns in order to mimic females in order to achieve copulation with other males, correct?
Yeah.
Is that just like just for like, pleasure within the animal kingdom? For fun?
No, they do it to copulate with the female and then like to actually be able to have sex with her, because otherwise with the larger male is going to keep driving them away. And
Yeah,
that's
sorry. I think
yeah.
I
you're
misheard when
good.
you were talking about it then, so thank you for the
You're good.
clarification.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, that cool cuttlefish picture you showed us, the
Yes.
one that was in the foreground was basically like, oh, I'm a girl, and then it was like got underneath the
Yes.
male. And okay, very good.
Yes, exactly.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay, who's got my next question? All right.
I'm fascinated by this idea of the coercive copulation in waterfowl specifically, because I've seen what looked like two males and a female. And I'm surprised she didn't drown, because like they were holding her underwater, and I'm like, how is that survival of the fittest when you destroy, you kill off your mate? So I'm just kind of curious about coercive copulation in the species who participate. Do they have a lower, I don't know, does it affect the population volume? And then the second question is, in my mind, I guess with an ethical hat on, coercive to me implies there's choice, which implies there's sentience, which, that's up for debate between, people and scientists, what animals have sentience and what don't, which ones don't. But in the waterfowl coercive copulation, what's coercive about it if you're a scientist, not you per se, but if you're a scientist that believes that waterfowl are not sentient, what is coercive about it? There's no choice involved. So two-part question.
Yeah. So with the population like size and dynamics question, it harms females, but ultimately, and yes, it has been shown to kill females in the past and then cause physical harm to females as well. But this is not just about waterfowls, and not many species in general. But ultimately, it results in a greater number of offspring, and so coercive mating existing leads to, in general, the population being able to survive through multiple generations in these species. And then a question about why we call it coercive. We see in a lot of species that these females are aversive to the mate. It is basically our behavioral observations of how the female is reacting. And then there is female choice, right? Like in the swordtails, for example, we know that the females go towards this large male, and the large male waits for her to copulate with him, while females that are chased by these smaller males are actually run away from them. Like they move away, and that's why we call it coercive. Yeah, and then there is also an interesting fact that I'm sorry that I don't know much about the waterfowl, but I'm going to just talk about fish because that's what I study, and that's why I call it coercive mating. Females from species like mosquito fish, where all males are coercive, when you present them with other flashier males from closely related species, they go towards those males. There's something going on there that is like, again, like there's a lot of questions about how this evolved in the first place that we are still trying to understand, but that's something that happens. That's a behavioral trait that I see, and I'm a behavior person, so.
All right. I think we saw one more question. Excellent.
I think you mentioned emus as an example, but in all of what you've learned about it, are there any other species where the male is the primary caregiver without the presence of the female?
Yes, it's stickleback fish. I'm sorry, this is just going to be fish, but I can't think of any others, and I want to work with them because they're really cool. But stickleback fish have paternal care, and it's like very weird, like why it exists in a fish. But they form these little nests, and the nests are attracted to females, and then just the males will take care. Like usually in other species, like males and females are kind of contributing to care. But yeah, like the nesting males in the bluegill sunfish too, I don't know if they do anything beyond creating the nest, but in a lot of species, the males will fan the eggs and such, and they'll do all the care for the eggs. Stickleback is the best example here. Yeah. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. Paternal care.
Well, clearly you're going to have to come back in a year
Yeah.
and give us an update.
Yeah.
Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you.